Alba, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for asking me to be on your
Absolutely.
podcast.
Yeah, pleasure is all mine. I would love if you could kind of take us back. You were born in Cuba and
Mhm.
you were there until Fidel Castro came in. And just because of, everything that we're seeing right now, I would love if you could talk about that. I know you were young.
Well, it does shape you because every trauma that you have throughout your life shapes who you are. And that's what hypnotherapy is all about, is finding those traumas that may be insignificant, but as a baby, I was very sheltered. I lived on a military base. My dad was sergeant major of the base in Cuba in Havana. And it just so happens that that is the base that was invaded on New Year's Day of 1959 when Castro came in with his revolutionaries and passed right by our house to get to the base, to the headquarters. And so that was the beginning of the end of my childhood there. And so we had gotten a tourist visa to get out of the country and visit my aunt. So my mother took my sister and I was only three at the time, almost three. I wasn't even three. And we visited New York for a little while just to get the lay of the land without my mother saying anything because my aunt was with the new government. And that's what's happening now in our own country is that some people are for the government, some people are against the government, and it divides families. So we left. My mother got to know a little bit about New York, which is where we went to. And then when we came back 4 months later, my father said, it's really gotten bad now. This island will become a jail without bars.
Mm.
And he didn't have a tourist visa to get out. He didn't have a passport because he thought it was going to end pretty soon. So my mom took my sister and I. My sister was about almost 12 at the time, and myself, pretty much a toddler still. And we moved to New York. We were couch surfing from place to place. My father was a Freemason, and he had a lot of connections of brothers that were in New York. So they gave us, a couch for a few days. And he finally arrived about six months later. He got a visa to go to Canada for pilgrimage to see for Saint Anne du Pre in Quebec. And the plane landed in New York, and he got off and asked for political asylum. Everybody in the army was being shot. They were, his life was in danger because
Mm.
he knew too much.
Mm.
And he actually helped Che Guevara get things in order. He kind of played both sides. It was almost like watching Schindler's List.
Wow.
When the letters would come in saying that somebody was a traitor, he would rip them up and would never get to them. So he saved a lot of his men's lives.
Wow.
So we that was like the first trauma is being separated from my father, being separated from a beautiful life where I was very sheltered. And now in New York, which is insane, we didn't know the language. I was a very introverted child. I was one of those weirdo kids that they didn't know what to feed me. I didn't play with other kids. I was not social. I was very, very shy, cried every day myself to sleep because, I was traumatized. So that was the beginning of my life. And so, falling into a group of people who are very introverted, I'm like the first one there. So that was very traumatic. I ended up growing up in New Jersey. We ended up moving to New Jersey, and then after graduation of high school, I moved to Miami, and then I was there for a few decades. So that was the beginning of my life. Is that traumatic? Everybody has, a beginning that's a little strange, but that was mine. That was how I got to be. And so I had issues with language. I was had learning issues growing up because I didn't understand people. I felt, even though that word wasn't around at the time, I felt like an alien. Like who
Mm.
are these people? Like, am I supposed to like social? I can't socialize with these people. But this isn't a time where that stuff wasn't talked about. I was immediately pegged as retarded in school. That's
Mm.
The teacher sat down with my parents and said, "I'm sorry, but your daughter is retarded." Well,
Wow.
I kind of was, if you think about retarded as a real word being kind of behind in
Hmm.
the things, but um, it was weird. It was weird growing up because I had that kind of label. I was just different. I was just a different type of person. I wasn't very sociable and hung out with the nerds, and that was just who I was. I was very different than most people. I never went to higher education. I was lucky enough to just graduate high school. And my father and mother were very proud of the fact that I had just made it to high school. So that was good. But I was very ambitious. And the moment that I left school and I started working, I realized how smart I was. I
Mm.
didn't realize that I was that smart, that I saw things from a different perspective than most people, which is why I didn't fit in school. I saw things differently, and I learned differently. And I always wanted to work with phones. Phones were my thing. I grew up when there were rotary phones, 60s and 70s, and I loved everything about phones. And I actually wanted to be a lineman. That was my thing. I wanted to be climbing up those poles and working with the wires.
Wow.
And I actually missed the appointment with the phone company and never got
Interesting.
never got to do that. But years later, I fell into telecommunications. It took a while for me to tumble into different jobs, but I fell into telecom, and I was discovered. The head of telecom discovered that I had a way of organizing things that was very unique that no one had ever taught me. And he says, "This is what we teach the telephone people on how to do phone systems, how to
Hmm.
organize all the features." And who taught you? I just see things from a different perspective. And I was promoted, 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 promoted through telecom. I loved it. Um, I thought I had won the lottery in life. I said, I can't believe they're paying me every 2 weeks for just playing because I love this job.
Wow.
And so I really loved telecom, and it got me to places I never expected to be. I was very good at what I did. I was very business oriented. Um, I ended up being very, very strict and very disciplined. I had a big staff. It was just a different world than growing up, which was strange.
Wow.
And I never allowed them to fail. My department never failed. I never, it's like failure was not an option. And I had the cockiest staff you can imagine. When they would walk into a meeting, they just owned the place because that's what I instilled in everybody is excellence in
Wow.
what you did. So, yeah, telecom was like part of my life that I loved. And all of a sudden in 1991, everything fell apart. And it's like the economy just fell apart and I lost my job. But because I had no higher education, no one would hire me. I had to start at the very bottom again as a temp. I went from being a VP in telecom of the whole network of a whole corporation to starting it as a temp again. And I'll tell you, that was just such a eye-opening experience to be at the top and all of a sudden at the bottom again. Yeah, it was tough, but it taught me a few things. And I think everybody needs to go through that kind of situation in their life because it keeps you humble. It
Yes.
really does. It keeps you
Yeah.
humble. And you will never know where you're going to go unless God kicks you in the behind. It made me go into a different direction in life. It made me see different things. And I think it was the greatest thing that ever happened. So, I had a lot of faith at that time, so it helped.
So what kind of pulled you out from, I believe your spiritual awakening started around the 1980s, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So at what point did you kind of shift from telecommunications to the life you're living now.
It was quite a long journey. I envy people now that have the internet and they have books and they have so much information. There was nothing about spirituality. Very little. Let's say
Very.
very little about spirituality. And in 1988, I think it is, 1988 or 89, around that time, things started like falling on my lap. It's like you go to a bookstore and it's like something falls off the shelf and you go, "Oh, this is interesting." I came across the book by Shirley McLaine called Out on a Limb. Now, Shirley McLaine was a famous actress at the time. Now she's in her 90s and not working too much, but she put herself out on a limb. She started she wrote a book about her spiritual journey, which was, something you didn't hear about ever. You, in the 80s, you were not allowed to talk about politics, religion, anything like that, or else you can get fired for that. Um, it was very, very frowned upon. So for her to put herself out there was really something else.
Yeah.
The Seth books. Ruth Montgomery was doing her work via automatic writing. And I had read like five of her books. I ate them up. Like I was so like in awe of what she could do, which was to communicate with those on the other side. And my father had passed 9 years before. And I had this little idea, wouldn't it be nice, to be able to see how dad's doing?
Mm,
Be careful what you ask for because, you know,
it'll come.
prayers are answered. And so I had this relationship with this guy who we used to just go to different places. And one day he said, "You want to go to this meeting that I'm going to?" And I said, "Okay, why not?" And it happened to be about transcendental meditation. And I think we were like in the front row, and they were talking about the benefits of meditation. Now, I was at that time, I was really in business at the time. This is in the 80s before all of this happened. I was at the top of my game at the time, and meditation was very woo-woo. I wanted nothing to do with it. I'm rolling my eyes. Okay, And at the end of the meeting, he turns over and he goes, "So you want to do it?" And I went, "All right." I'm a people pleaser. And I signed up for this thing. It was like $300 to learn how to do transcendental meditation. I had plenty of money at the time. I was making a good salary. I said, "No problem." And we go to a meeting and it didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out. They gave us this word that we're supposed to repeat and sit quietly as you repeat this mantra, and you're supposed to go into this Zen-like state. And we were all like in a living room, dark. Well, as soon as I started breathing and doing the mantra, my head started spinning. It started going back and forth, and it really strange. It was like somebody was massaging my head. Um, And I said, "This is not Zen-like at all." And I opened my eyes, I looked around, and everybody else is like, really quiet. And I'm like, "This is not working for me." And I didn't like it at all. I said, I don't know why people think this is so great. I don't like this head spinning thing." But I went home. I said, I'm not going to give up. I went home and I said, "Why don't I do the mantra thing and also put a pen and pad in my lap? And let's see what happens." And all of a sudden, my pen lifted up and starts scribbling stuff on a paper. I didn't open my eyes because I was freaked out. And I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing. And finally, it stops. And I open my eyes, and all over the paper in Spanish was my father saying, "I am your father. I am okay. I am your father. I am okay. I'm your father," all over the paper. And of course, I was freaked out. I shut my eyes again. I did it again. And my father had this John Hancock type of signature.
Hmm.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And he would always start it by spinning his hand, getting it ready, kind of like a warm up, and then he would write it. And that's what my hand started doing all over the page, his signature all over the page. I could feel his excitement being able to sign his signature again. Well, I was living it with my mom at the time, and I ran into her room. This is like 11 o'clock at night, and I woke her up and I said, Mom, Dad communicated with me. She was a very spiritual person. She believed in all of this stuff. The next morning, she says, So what did you do to communicate with him? And I said, This is exactly what I did. So I get home from work and she says, He communicated with me too.
Wow.
I said, That's not fair. You didn't pay $300. You know? And so she and I were both communicating with him on paper. He was dealing with their marital stuff, a
Mm,
lot of forgiveness, and he was playing with me. He was teaching me. He had a different relationship. He was teaching me. He went over everything that happened during his death, what was going on the other side. And then my sister chimed in and she started doing the same thing. But she was more telepathic. My sister was very telepathic.
interesting.
So that went on for a while until he finally told me, I can't write to you anymore because I need to go to school now. And that was a shocker. I said, What do you mean you're going to school? You're dead. Do dead people go to school? And he says, Yes, we have lessons that we have here. We have to go to school. But I will give you over to another guide who will continue teaching you. And that went on for a few years. And they weren't like teaching me really deep stuff. It was basically like whatever question I had about stuff that was going on in my life, they would tell me it would be okay, you know? And then finally, that guide says, I'm done with you now. He said it in a nicer way, but there's a master who wants to come through, a master teacher. I said, okay. By this time I have been shuffled over. This is the third promotion. And this one was teaching me much higher level teaching. And in 2007, and I called him teacher. I would always ask, what is your name? And he goes, no, just call me teacher. I've known you. I've known you for many, many lifetimes, but you could just call me teacher. 2007, he said to me, I want to let you know that your name is going to be known worldwide,
Wow.
and you're going to be doing your work face to face. And I just laughed. I said, You're on crack. There's no way that's going to happen. At that time, I was doing some life coaching on the phone, and I was terrified to talk to people face to face.
Mm.
I still had that issue of self-esteem and kind of shyness about doing that. And I said, I'm no Tony Robbins. I'm not going to be doing this worldwide. Little did I know. I did that kind of naturally at work. I was coaching people. And they would always tell me, Alba, you should do this for a living. You should really coach for a living because you're so intuitive. And they didn't use those words then, but you just know. You just know what to say to people. So in 2009, and I always wanted to be like a public speaker, but I didn't have a story. I said, how can you know, I'm not going to be able to talk to people because I have nothing to say. My life is pretty boring. I've been married, divorced. I've got a kid. There's nothing really there. You know, 2009, my whole world fell apart. My son was living with me at the time, and um, there was some really weird stuff going on in the neighborhood. And there were some cats that were being killed.
Mm.
And some of them were being killed by stray dogs, which they do. And then somebody came up with a hypothesis saying that the other cats that were being killed was a copycat killer and it was a human. It's just somebody came up with this idea. And my son was pegged with the
Mm.
crimes. Um, He was accused of this. I went through a full night of sitting in a police car while they raided my house. A whole truckload of evidence. All my personal stuff was taken. Everything, it was just a horrific situation. And he was arrested for something he did not do. He was
Oh, I'm
innocent.
so sorry.
The worst part, besides my son being arrested, was that they took all my journals. And when people can't say things out loud, you journal. You want to get your feelings out, you put them in writing. And I had all my automatic writings too. So I had 1,260 pages in my nightstand of just notebooks of all my stuff. And they took that in as evidence against my son.
Wow.
Because I happened to ask one day about the cats. Why are these cats being killed? And just because that was in there, it was going to be
Mm.
used as evidence. So that was my dark night of the soul. I had PTSD for a very long time. Um, I lost my house. I lost all my money. I lost all my savings. I lost my sanity. I was hospitalized twice from stress. He was under house arrest for over 17 months
Oh my
for
goodness.
something he didn't do. It
Oh,
was insane. It was an insane time. And the worst part about it was that what they were saying on the news and what they were saying online about him and about our family.
mm,
I read the most horrific comments you can imagine because people are very, very, cats are very dear to people's hearts.
mm,
I
mm,
have one. And uh, people were outraged and they were calling for blood. They were really, and I saw all these comments and I made a vow and I said, if I could ever control the comments that are being said, I will do it. And that's what I do on my channel. I do not allow any cynicism, any criticism, anything that would hurt my clients
mm-hmm,
because they read that
mm-hmm,
and I'm doing therapy on them.
mm-hmm,
So if they're reading, oh no, this is just BS, you've just ruined my therapy on them.
mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's a different thing than just bias.
Mm-hmm.
So he was exonerated
Good.
and and I was very angry still
I
because
bet.
a mother feels everything that their child feels. Plus, I had this thing with the writings. Just think about it. The state attorney's office was reading my writings, and 5 attorneys had copies of my writings, and the Miami Herald newspaper had copies of my writings.
Wow. Your
Yeah,
personal, very personal statement.
personal.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm saying to them, but it's got my sex life in there, and they're like, your sex life is not that interesting to them, you know. The people who are reading this are supposed to read this. That's what they were telling me. And I was very angry. So when he was exonerated, I knew that if I didn't take care of the anger, I would get cancer.
Wow.
I had to get that anger out
Yeah.
somehow. So I started kickboxing. That is a great therapy for anger.
I bet.
You kick, you punch, you knee, you run, everything got out of me.
Mm.
The bag had the detective's face on it. I mean, it was a great therapy for me to just get all that anger until after a while it was like there's nothing there left. They're forgiven because they didn't know any better. They really believed the story. They believed the story that was created around all of this. And how can you not forgive when someone really doesn't know the truth? So I figured you know, that's done. And while I was kickboxing, I got injured. I was getting injured constantly, which is really unlike me. I've never broken anything before. And I was tripping over my dog. I was hurting my knee. I got tendonitis. I couldn't do my kickboxing anymore. While I was doing that, I was just scrolling through my iPad and I found this older woman talking on there about hypnosis. And it was Dolores Cannon.
Mm.
And I went, "Oh, wow." I said, this was something that I wanted. I was doing life coaching, but it wasn't enough. I wanted to get deeper into their soul because I knew that the coaching wasn't going to be good enough. I was able to make an impact with the coaching, but there was something deeper. And I had never even thought about hypnosis. But I said, this is going to get me better at coaching. Within a few weeks, I was already taking her class. Did it online. While I was doing it online, I was ordering my business cards. I was developing my website before I even finished the class. And as soon as I finished the class, I started practicing. Anybody I could grab, I would do a hypnosis session. Every weekend, I was doing hypnosis sessions, just practicing and practicing and practicing. And just like when I was in telecom, I wanted to be the best. There was nothing less than excellence. Okay. And that was my own, it was like if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be the best at it,
Yeah.
In my view. I'm not saying I wanted to be better than anybody else. I was going to be the best at myself.
Give it your all. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to give it up my all. I don't ever compare myself with somebody else. It was like I was going to be the best that I could be. And I had met a colleague, my friend Antonio Sanjo, at our QHHT level 2 class. And we started talking, and he says to me, Alba, there's this guy online who does hypnosis. He's from Colombia, and he's really well known. You ought to watch his channel. And that was Aurelio Mejia. And my hobby was sewing at the time. I was making pet beds.
How cool.
Right. And I would be up all hours of night making these beds, with their names embroidered and everything, and their pictures embroidered. I loved, sewing. And I would just sit with my iPad just listening to Aurelio do his hypnosis sessions. And then on the weekends, I would do my own. But what happens is when you start watching somebody, you start learning from them. And I started putting in some of his techniques. And the QHHT world is very, very into do not water their technique, do not put any other things in there. So
Huh.
I felt I was no longer doing QHHT. I was already mixing stuff. And after a while, I started just doing the technique like his also. But I realized, and then I started putting them online because my colleague pushed me to put it online. He says, Alba, everybody is watching Aurelio in Spanish, but there's no English speaking hypnosis sessions online. He says, put them online. And I was very like I didn't want to be seen online. It was like, I always set up the camera to where it looked like you were just looking over my shoulder. Okay. I wanted the people to just see what it looked like for me. It wasn't about me, it was about them.
Mhm.
And it started really taking off. And since it started taking off, I couldn't do Aurelio's method purely because that was therapy. And
Mm.
in the state of Florida, you must be a hypnotherapist to do therapy. So then I got certified as a clinical and interperson. I got certified in all their certifications. So now I felt comfortable. It's like, okay, now I'm really doing therapy. And that's how it started. I mean, then I just started putting out sessions. I've got almost 700 sessions right as of right now. I don't do my sessions for YouTube. Um, I mean, I've done thousands and thousands of sessions, and only a certain amount get online. But I only put the ones that, I feel people would learn from them, or that there's too many that are too private to put out
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
But the interesting ones I put out there, and yeah, so it's taken up. That's how that
Absolutely.
started.
Interesting they are. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
your links to everything in the description so that people can find you and see what we're talking about. They are
Hmm.
incredible. For those who, I mean, we all have an idea of what hypnosis is, but for those who are just kind of, getting their toes wet in the spiritual
Yeah.
community and all of that. How do you explain what it is?
Well, we are souls. I mean, we're spirit, first of all. We're spirit. And we come into this earth as a school to learn things. Just like on the other side, we're always learning, we're always evolving. So we come to earth to evolve our soul. And but what happens is that every lifetime has we have issues in every lifetime. And some of these issues are not resolved. Just because you die doesn't mean you've resolved that issue.
Mm,
You may be a person who is very cold to people, someone who's very nasty to people. Think of the people who were slave drivers and things like that. Beat people, and they were just nasty people. They get to the other side and they realize, oops,
mm,
because once you get on the other side, you go through a review, and that review, you see everything, you see and feel everything that you did, but you also feel it from their perspective. Okay? So imagine if you've been so nasty and all of a sudden you feel what you've done on the
mm,
other side. So now it's like, oh, I didn't learn to be compassionate. I need to learn compassion. So you want to come back because you want to evolve your soul. And on the other side, you never think it's going to be hard.
mm.
So you come back here, and now all of a sudden, you're on the other side of things. Now you're married to someone who's a narcissist or someone who beats you up, and you happen to be the opposite gender and you get to feel what they felt. And so sometimes we're saying like, why is this happening to me? Why do I keep getting the same type of issue over and over and over again? I can't seem to get away from these type of people. Well, those are your teachers.
Absolutely.
The moment that you change the way you react to them, everything changes.
Mm,
The minute you understand, this is why I came here. I came here to be this type of a person. So in hypnosis, what happens is that we take you to the origin of where all this began. All of this began. It could be in this lifetime or it could be another lifetime. And we don't live in linear time. So all of these things could be happening simultaneously and it could be affecting us. So in hypnosis, we take the person to where the origin of all this begins, or in my case, I use the verbiage that my teacher, Dr. Jose Luis Cabulis, uses is ask your soul to take you to where it needs to heal, where your soul needs to heal. And that could be childhood, it could be in the womb, it could be in another lifetime. So we will take you to be an observer and to relive that experience so that you can understand what has happened and see it from a different perspective. Many things happen during the womb. A lot happens during the womb.
absolutely.
You want me
That
to give you,
does
do
not
you
get
want me to give
talked
you an
about enough.
example, a really wild
Completely.
example?
Yes.
This man came to me one day and he says to me, Alba, I cannot trust my mother. I don't know why. I'm, 30, 40, I don't remember how old he was. I cannot trust my mother. I've never been able to trust her. I don't know why. We go back to the womb. His father was not his father. She
Mm,
cheated on her husband, and he was somebody else's child. From the moment he was conceived, she lied. And so we had to do some work there
yeah.
because that's what he felt. He already knew from inside the womb that this woman could not be trusted. And then you have many, 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 many where the parents are talking about abortion. The
Hmm.
moment that they're there, it's like, oh, we can't have this child. It's going to be a nuisance for us. We can't afford it. Oh my God, we can't handle the stress. And here's this child, and they're going, no, don't kill me. So from the moment they're born, They're already trying to please their parents because you're going to kill me. Their subconscious, in their subconscious, is like, you're going to kill me. I need to please you. I need to do whatever it takes to make you happy. Or they're angry at the parents. It depends on the personality of the child. And then you have people who don't remember things. They may have been assaulted as children, assaulted as teenagers, and they've blacked out that information. So that's stuff from this lifetime, which is a lot,
Yeah.
especially the people who are light workers and who are spiritual people. They've taken the fast track, it seems. To try to get rid of all their karma. They've taken the fast track and they've picked some pretty wild parents and wild situations to be growing up in.
I
So,
love
yeah.
that you're bringing this up. I did some regression work. This was I think it was in 2021.
Mhm.
And they just kept I was doing it with there were two people overseeing the session, and they
Yeah.
just kept taking me back and back and back, and I ended up in the womb.
Yeah.
And I could hear it was like I could hear the conversation that my mom was having with
Mhm.
my dad when she was
Yeah.
telling him that she was pregnant with me. Now I have
Yeah.
an older brother of 2 years, so I was the second one born. And I mean, I don't know what the reasoning was, if it was he was an alcoholic, and so I don't know if it was stress or just not wanting a second child or finances or whatever. I just
Yeah.
knew that he was not excited about me
Yeah.
coming into the world, about my mom being pregnant. My mom had never told me about this. And after that session, I ended up speaking to her about it. And she
Yes.
confirmed that that's what took place. And what's interesting about what you were saying about how when we come in, sometimes we can be people pleasers, or we can be angry, it depends
Yeah.
on how you handle it. But my great aunt, my grandmother on my mom's side, her sister, she's always said that the moment I came out of the womb, I was just people pleasing and serving others. I just had this
Yeah.
deep yearn to just
Yeah.
help and, do. It was very much me
Yeah.
trying to people please. And
Exactly.
everything you're saying makes complete
Yeah.
sense. And I think, just like you said, the importance of talking about that, because we don't realize, what our babies, when they're inside of us, what they are hearing and experiencing. And I mean, it's just like they're outside of the body
Exactly.
living this life. I mean, yeah. I
And we are connected to our mother's emotions, which is the most important thing. If the mother is stressed, if the mother has insecurities, if the mother is angry, we are connected energetically. Like we've never cut that umbilical cord from our mom. And we will continue to act like the mom in certain ways where it makes no sense. It makes no sense that, why is it that I have a fear of this? Like, why do I have a fear of this? Because your mother did. And we have to cut that umbilical cord. And sometimes it happens when we die, when they die, and we finally are released from them. But um, many times we just continue with that same fear, that ancestral fear. And it could have been their mother and their mother behind, before then. So it's very interesting that's some of the work. Another work that I do, I just was thought about, is a lot of lost souls. A lot of people have attached souls that are lost, and that influences people a lot. Did you see the movie The Sixth Sense?
Yes.
In The Sixth Sense, the psychiatrist gets murdered. He doesn't know he's dead. He's a lost soul. The only one who sees them is the child, who is a medium. So he doesn't know the difference. And this child is seeing all of these lost souls. These lost souls who have not been able to complete something For example, the little girl who wanted him to to check the videotape to so that he could see that she was poisoned to death. This
Mm.
is in the sixth sense.
Hmm.
So these lost souls haven't crossed over and they're influencing people. They're scaring them or they're attaching to their vibrational field. And this happens a lot, Allie, when you go to a place where you lose control. For example, bars,
Mm.
hospitals, cemeteries, where your vibrational field drops. Okay. You have a few too many drinks, you have a whole line of dead people wanting to drink through you.
Hmm.
So they attach to your vibrational field, and every time you take a drink, it's like they're drinking. And you may notice people, you've been drinking a lot lately. What happened to you? And you're starting to act differently. You're like a different person. It's like this soul is this other attachment, this spirit is living through them. They're not going to let go because they're getting a free ride. So in my sessions, we work with them as another client because
Wow.
they're attached. Some people attached for good reasons, okay? A parent dies and they don't want to leave their child
Mm.
alone.
Mm.
And I've had people come and say, I can't have a relationship. I don't understand why, I can't ever get married. Well, their father won't let them. The
Wow.
father has not left yet. The father comes through and they'll say, I'm not letting her marry that, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
So the father is still there.
What shocks me or shocked me when I first learned about souls was just how many there were. And
Yeah.
it makes sense that a soul wouldn't cross over fully if it was confused. Or I know I've
Mhm.
spoken to some people that will say if they're on a lot of medications, when they're passing, that can
Of course.
confuse them. Um,
That's why I said hospitals,
yes, yes.
because you go into surgery and you never come out. Well, the soul still thinks they're alive.
Mm,
So it goes home and nobody talks to them. Hey, what are you doing with my stuff? You know, because they're dead, but they don't know they died because they didn't have closure, which is why it's so important when someone dies for you to be there for them,
mm,
to say goodbye, to say, I love you,
mm.
you know,
Yeah.
and, go home now, go to God. Otherwise, if they die in a surgery or they get killed in a car accident or they get killed by a stray bullet, so many different, so many different reasons. They get drunk and they just pass out, plane crash, anything like that is sudden, it's going to affect them. And they may not cross over, they may not go. So it's important for in hypnosis, to find these because a lot of them are creating symptoms in them.
Mm,
They'll come with a symptom that they don't understand. Why am I having this pain in my back? It could be a lost soul that they got shot there. It could be that you just walked through a cemetery and someone said, "Oh, I like her light. Let me go home with her." When someone comes
wow.
to see me, I have no idea how many clients I'm going to be seeing that day.
Wow.
I mean, I could be helping seven of them. So, and sometimes it's just so much. And that's where I use, I try to spend as much time with each soul as possible, but there's some times where I just tell them, listen, just all go. It's going to be okay. Or I'll call in the angels and have the angels retrieve them. On their behalf, I'll call them to come and take them. So it's great work. It's great work. It's something that you're just not doing one thing. There's so many different ways that it could, a lost soul could be someone that died on a property and won't go because that's their land. You have a lot of that. You have the Native Americans, you have the old homesteaders that, this is my land and my house, and what are you doing in my house? They're not leaving because that's their house. And those are the ghosts, that are there. And sometimes we need to just tell them, listen, you can go to a house just like this one on the other side, you know?
Wow.
So, yeah, there's so many different reasons why they're still here. I told you about the father with the children. It could be a child that dies and just is lost and finds a playmate, a little toddler, same age, and then they grow up together, always attached to them.
Wow.
A lot of different stories. That's why I think people are hooked on my channel because you hear about so many different things. And sometimes what happens, and this is really interesting, if you don't really know how to find these lost souls, detect them, you may think as a hypnotist that you're doing a past life regression on someone, and it's actually the past life of the lost soul.
Wow.
Sometimes the session starts and boom, and I'm hearing the story, and I'm getting, because of my instinct now, having done so many of these, it's like, this is not them.
You
This
could
is,
sense it.
yeah, it's like
Wow.
this. And you just ask them, is this the same person, or are you somebody different? No, no, I'm different, It's not their past life regression.
You realize there's a lost soul and you're trying to tell them to it's time,
Yeah.
it's okay to go. Do do they always go or do some of them
No,
still stay? Interesting.
no, some of them won't go. And I have to get consent. The client must allow them to go too. And my first ever encounter with a lost soul that I knew of was this man. He was a very good looking man. And I guess he was in his 40s or something like that. Very successful in his business. He had it all. He had the money, he had the job, he had everything. And I did a regression on him. Well, it happened to be the regression of the lost soul. And when it started coming through, it, this this soul was so cocky and so nasty, and I was not experienced at all at that time. This was my first encounter. I was trying to do the thing that Aurelio Mejia would do with them, but I wasn't Aurelio Mejia, and they could see right through you. They
Mm,
could see if you have no experience. I didn't have confidence. It was such a bad session. And I said, why are you here? And he goes, because I make him rich and famous. I make him attractive to women. He wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for me. He was so cocky. I asked him, do you want to let him go? And he goes, nope.
wow.
What are you going to do?
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
you going to do? Plus, that was the catalyst for me to really research on how to work with lost souls. I had no clue. And remember, this stuff was not online. There was no training on this. So I had to learn how to deal with this. It wasn't easy. And when you're new at something, they could read you. They know
Mm,
exactly if you're a good person. They know if you're a BSer. They know how much confidence you have. And one of the really interesting ones that I did, which was kind of difficult. It's online. I don't know where to find it though. It's the Kevin Moore show. Kevin wanted me to he wanted to interview me in Orlando, and I flew over to see him, but he surprised me that there was a woman, a channel, who was channeling Seth. And it kind of like blew me away. And he says, would you do a session on her? And as soon as Seth came through, Seth is a collective, it's not a person. As soon as Seth came through, he says, like, who are you? And it kind of blew me away. I didn't know what to say. I said, well, read, connect with my higher self, read me, and you tell me, you know, if if you can talk to me, because what am I going to do? Here's a spirit.
yeah.
They could read you if you're there to do any malice, if you're there with different intention. And that's what I think is good about my work is that I'm not there with an ego. I'm there purely for my client and to help them. not there for anything except to, um, as I made a vow and a promise when I first started, I wanted to be basically for God to use my words, to just be the messenger for God. Whatever I was saying would be good for people. So that's how I do my work is,
Incredible.
whatever I'm saying is coming through me. It's not from me, it's coming through me. So yeah,
Do you remember everything? Because I know a lot of times when channels are in a session, they don't remember what they have said in the moment, but they'll go back and you don't remember.
I don't really, as soon as I'm done with a session, if it's going to be online, I immediately edit it like as soon as they leave because I I'm going through my notes and I could kind of decipher my notes then.
That makes
Later later I will not know what's on that paper. It's
yeah.
like, what is this?
What does that mean?
But on my notes, I have timestamps and things of things that I want to remember. But after they're gone, I don't remember. I may remember the gist of it, of something that may have really been influencing me during the session, but most of it, I have no idea. And when I'm talking, the cadence of my voice is totally different. Um, Sometimes I don't even finish sentences, which is weird. Sometimes
Interesting.
I talk like E.T., kind of, is it E.T.? Who's the one that talks,
E.T. Yeah,
Yoda?
or Yoda.
Yoda.
Yeah, both. They both talk weird.
You kind of speak backwards, like
Yes.
sometimes it comes out like that, and my conscious mind is kind of like, what are you doing? What are you saying? Are you going to finish that sentence? And it's like, nope, I'm done. And it's like we're so connected.
Oh,
My
wow.
client and I are so connected. We're on the same wavelength. And when I'm doing this work, I could say it now because it's just been so long. I'm remote viewing with them. I'm there with them wherever they are. So a lot of my sessions are really to confirm what it is that I'm seeing where they are.
Ah,
You see what I mean? Like
that makes
I'm there
sense.
with
Yeah.
them, and then I'll be asking them questions to kind of confirm what I'm experiencing
Wow.
to make sure that I'm there with them. So it's really, it's interesting. It's interesting how that is. And it's developed over the years. I wasn't like that before, but now I'm really there with them. It's exhausting for me because it's like time traveling.
Hmm.
They're doing it, but you're not only are you time traveling with them, but you're also facilitating at the same time. And so it's kind of almost like double duty.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm getting the information to direct, but I'm also there.
Wow.
So yeah, so I'm doing less sessions, a lot less sessions than I used to because of that, because it's
Yeah.
just
Too much.
physically and mentally and emotionally just draining because the contents of the sessions are much more powerful.
Mm.
When you're going through really bad assaults and things like that, you got to witness it.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, you know, I've never had to go through this in my life. I had a very sheltered childhood, but to have to go through that and kind of walk them through it and help them with it, it takes a lot. It
Absolutely.
does. And some people will say, "Oh, no, it's not that bad," but it is to me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you're in
No,
there.
it definitely, yeah. Yeah. I mean, same thing with people that, volunteers that help abused animals and all. I
Yeah,
mean, my hat goes off to anyone that's doing any of
exactly.
this kind of work. It's a lot to
Yeah.
watch and witness and experience on a daily basis for sure.
Yeah. But
Wow.
what's beautiful, Allie, is that, I feel like I've been entrusted by God to help people.
Yeah.
That, you know, um, I didn't want to come. I know I had a regression in which I saw myself before I came here. I did not want to do this,
Mm.
but I was being told, you're the only one who could do this.
Wow.
You have to do it, and you got to do it. And I was not wanting to come. I knew it was going to be awful.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and I've done this before. I know I've done this many, many times before. This is not my first
Wow.
rodeo here.
Well, on behalf of humanity, on behalf of all of us, thank you for coming. Because your work is needed. You are needed. Your presence, just, yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really interesting, when I think of, how we started our interview, where I came from, you know, to get to where I am right now it's very mind-blowing because, to be called retarded in school and now,
Yes.
you realize that you have I had different way of dealing with life. I see things differently than other people. I see a different picture. I don't think I was in the 3D world except for, when I was in business, heavy in business. I was always on the cusp of being in a different type of reality. And yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting life that I'm living right now.
Incredible. This is blowing my mind. Can you talk about some of the, because I know you use a combination of techniques during your sessions.
Mhm.
I know you use some scalar wave frequencies,
Oh yeah.
tuning forks, Tibetan bowl vibrations. Can you talk about
Yeah.
what some of those things are? And do you use all of the techniques in every session, or does it all depend on
Well,
the client?
if they're here live in person in my office, I've got scalar waves going. Whether they know it or not, they're in the background. So I usually have the ancient solfeggio frequencies, which is hitting every one of your chakras.
Mm,
That's already happening from the moment they walk into my house. That's just sitting in the corner, emitting. During the sessions, I do like to use the tuning forks. That started, I think, in 2020 is when I started using them. Um, I was trying to it started with a type of induction that I wanted to. I used to try different inductions all the time, like, the induction of the week. I was just trying everything to see what would work. And honestly, you don't even need an induction for
mm,
hypnosis. You don't need it, but that's another story. But I wanted to use a sound to help with the induction. And then I got so enamored with it that I started buying tuning forks and buying more tuning forks and buying more tuning forks and buying more. And then I went crazy with them. I started using them. I started doing actual ancient solfeggio chakra balancing online for people. And then I started using the tuning forks in the sessions because I felt that the sound helped
mm,
amplify what they were doing. So if I asked them to remove something from their heart, I felt that it would help, you know, with the sound. And then if you're going to put something back in, it would help with the sound. And then I took a sound healing certification course, and I started doing sound healing just on the side, just because it's fun. And then I started using the Tibetan bowls, during the sessions. So sound is very important. I think it just helps amplify what I'm doing. And my voice alone is an instrument.
mm.
So the voice is the instrument anyway. So then as you add more frequency to it, obviously it's going to help the session. So it's just kind of a sideline that I just started doing. It's not something that's required, obviously. People have
Yeah.
been doing hypnosis for centuries, for not centuries, but for a long time. But I like frequencies, and I have a Rife machine that I use all the time, not on my clients, but as a separate service. And I just love frequencies. I just
Yeah.
think that's the thing.
I definitely want to talk about the discourse.
I met Jill Cole in 2017 when I went to do some sessions in New Zealand. And she didn't know anything about me, but we had a fantastic session. And during the session, she was told by her guides that we were going to be working together. I had been doing so many of these sessions already, and people say stuff all the time about my future, and I don't give it any thought. So she was just another one where I said, yeah, whatever. She's in New Zealand. There's no way I'm going to be working with her because she's so far away. Well, she ended up putting together a class for my colleague and I, Antonio, to come down to New Zealand, do a class. And I did another session on her while I was there. And in that session, they said, you are going to be working together and, you're going to write a book. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Still. And then COVID came and I could no longer travel to do my sessions. So now I had to do them online. And oh, isn't it convenient? I can now work with Jill online.
Wow.
So her guides basically told her that we were going to be doing 12 sessions and it would be a book. And I didn't have to do much because she would contact me right before the session. She would give me like two or three or four words or topics that her guides would give her. And I would just like weave them into the session. So tell me about forgiveness, or tell me about doubt, and it went on forever. So she's a great channel. She's an amazing channel. She's very intuitive, and um, it's a book. The Discourse is a book of the 12 sessions. 10 of them are online on my playlist. The first two were not put online. But you can open the book anywhere and it's basically question and answer. You could pick up the book and it talks to you about everything. It's a good metaphysical introductory book.
Even just I mean, the questions, who are you? What happens when you die?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what is a guide and a higher self? It's these big questions that we all have.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So highly recommend it.
And you could listen to it on Audible, which is the videos that we did. It's the same as the videos, and you could read the book. It's on Kindle, so it's in all the different forms. That's what's great about it. It's real. It's not like we didn't read the book. It's the
Yeah.
actual session. So there's a lot of crying, and there's a lot of there could be some outside noises, but it's raw. It's what it is.
Is there anything else that's on your heart that you want to say? Any final words?
I mean, hypnosis is something that's interesting. Just make sure that if you do go get a hypnosis session, that it is someone who's qualified. It's not just someone playing around. Because when you are in hypnosis, you do open up your soul. And if they don't know how to put things back, it could just stay open, and keep you kind of wondering what happened. So uh, I would say just make sure that if you go do a regression or something, that it is someone who knows what they're doing,
Yeah.
not just, hey, I think I know what Alba does. Let me just try it. It's not like that at all. And my colleague does teach introspective hypnosis. I do go to the classes and co-teach with him. So if
Wow.
anybody's interested, they can look at my page. I usually list those classes. My page is albaweinman.com. And if you wanted to get a session with me, it's not easy.
I bet.
It's not easy. I do a schedule on a monthly basis. I put a calendar on my newsletter and it goes out every month for the next month. And whoever comes in first gets the session. I don't do any waiting lists. I don't do anything past a month because I don't know what my life is going to be like in 2 months.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
don't know. And I don't want to be locked in to 2 months from now.
Good for
It's
you.
the way it's the way I live my life. I
I
just want to
love
live
it.
1 month at a time.
Yeah.
So next month we'll figure out what's going to happen in the following month. So that's how I live my life. Those are my that's and I have too many people that want sessions. So I'd be booked for years and
Yes.
I
Yes.
can't.
Incredible. Alba, this was amazing. My
Thank
mind is
you. Thank
blown.
you.
This is not, I mean, yeah, you have just shared some things that I just wasn't expecting. And again, I will have your links to everything, your
Yeah,
website.
just watch my
Oh,
channel. Just watch
yeah.
my channel because I give out my business cards to people on planes and in Ubers and everything. And it's not for them to get a session with me. It's for them to watch my channel because I think you could learn so much about spirituality and about stuff
Excellent.
that you never could imagine on that channel. And it's
Absolutely.
not interviews, these are just sessions. And you
Yeah.
have to be very patient because they are not abridged. Okay. That's one thing that I want people to know. When you sit through a session, you're sitting through a session.
Hmm.
If I
Hmm.
have to do it, you have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. There's
That's
no
right.
cliff notes here. Okay. You see how long it takes for someone to open up and to get flowing because I want people to know what a real session is like, not to give you
Absolutely.
the cliff notes, not it's that's what it's like.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Alba, thank you so, so, so much.
You're welcome.
Truly.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
inviting me.